The movie opened with a cold-blooded young master walking past a line of bodyguards to enter a grand hall. Inside, his grandmother was burning incense and praying to find her long-lost grandson, Chunjua. The young master couldn't hide his arrogance, seeing Chunjua's absence as a chance to take over as the head of the Qin family. However, the grandmother immediately rejected that idea. To her, Chunjua was only missing, not dead. The position of family head could only belong to Chunjua, and anyone who objected would be expelled from the family. Chinyu, Chunjua's twin brother, stood to the side, unable to hide his ambition. He secretly calculated that if Chunjua didn't return within 3 months, he would officially take over as family head. No one knew that at that very moment, Chunjua was working as a security guard in normal company. Sitting in the break room, he intently stared at a photo in his hand, his face showing determination. 3 months had passed, and the truth about his mother's death had not yet been revealed. He knew in his heart that it was time to take action, and Mei Ying was a crucial link. Just then, the old security guard curiously saw the photo, mistakenly thinking that Chunjua had a crush on director Mei Ying. Chunjua coldly said that she was an ex-girlfriend. The two argued, causing the photo to fall just as Mei Ying walked by. With no other choice, he had to kneel down to pick it up, while she threw in the car keys and walked inside. As soon as she left, 2 strangers showed up and quietly followed her. Chunjua immediately noticed something was wrong. He quickly rushed to block the elevator door, preventing the 2 men from attacking. When they tried to act, he made a decisive move, knocking both of them out of the elevator. Mei Ying frantically opened the box, checking that the lucky jade bowl was still intact. However, when Chunjua saw it, he immediately recognized something was off and said it was just a high-quality fake. She didn't believe him and took the bowl to an expert for authentication. The results surprised her greatly. The expert confirmed it was a real bowl and even intended to charge a fee for the assessment. Chunjua didn't say much, snatched the receipt, announced that he would temporarily hold onto the money, and asked for permission to tell the truth about the bowl. The expert looked disdainful, not believing that a security guard would dare to claim to know better. An older man accompanying him also laughed, challenging Chunjua that if he didn't tell the truth, he would have to buy a vase worth 2 million yuan that was on display. Mei Ying unexpectedly spoke up in support, stating that if he was wrong, she would be responsible for buying it. Chunjua picked up the bowl, gently turned it in his hand, and pointed out that the blue-yellow color was mixed with impurities and the thickness was clearly uneven, indicating it was only a high-quality replica. Both experts were stunned into silence. The silver-haired old man immediately changed his attitude, offering to give the vase as a gift and hoping to make friends. But Chunjua remained cold, saying that he was nothing special, just a normal security guard under Director Su's command. With that, he let go of the bowl, causing the precious vase to fall to the floor and shatter. In another development, the 2 robbers failed their mission and were interrogated by Jia Qi, someone from the Jiangnan group. When he found out that a security guard had foiled his plot, he angrily went to see Mei Ying, pretending to care. He sweetly said that after they got married, he would make up for any financial losses suffered by the Wanlong Hotel, emphasizing that she didn't need to give gifts to the Jiangnan group anymore. Chunjua, hearing this, immediately questioned whether he had prior knowledge of the gift-giving and might even be involved in the robbery. Jia Qi immediately showed a contemptuous attitude, saying that a security guard wasn't qualified to question him. But before he could say more, Mei Ying unexpectedly announced that Chunjua was her fiancé. Both men were stunned. Not stopping there, she grabbed Chunjua's hand and placed a kiss on his lips. At the office, Mei Ying gave Chunjua a black card with 30,000 yuan already loaded on it. It was the fee she was offering to hire him to pretend to be her fiancé for a month. However, Chunjua refused outright, saying that he only sold his skills, not himself. Not easily giving up, she held his hand and declared she was willing to agree to any conditions he set. In response, he didn't say a word, just gently touched his thumb to the middle of both their lips, repeating the gesture she had made as a sign of a fair agreement. Finally, they shook hands, confirming a silent, unspoken deal was established. At the Wanlong Hotel, Chunjua wore a sharp outfit that even made the security guards next to him marvel at his elegant appearance. He took out a card with 40,000 yuan on it and gave it to the security guard to pay for his granddaughter's tuition. The security guard took the card and then gave him back a string of ancestral heirloom bead from his family as a sign of deep respect in exchange. He accepted it without hesitation, immediately putting it on his wrist. At the same time, Chen Yu's subordinates found Chen Zhua's whereabouts. He immediately reported that Chen Zhua was in Jiangnan and had a close relationship with Mei Ying. On Mei Ying's side, she took Chen Zhua home to introduce him to her parents. However, her foster mother couldn't hide her anger. She didn't accept that her daughter was engaged to someone who was just a security guard, constantly blaming her and asking why she didn't choose Jia Qi, someone more worthy. Mei Ying didn't back down, retorting, "So what if he's a security guard? In my eyes, Chen Zhua is better than many others." The atmosphere became even more tense when her father stepped in, demanding that Mei Ying not be disrespectful. Meanwhile, Jia Qi showed up, unhesitatingly mocking Chen Zhua. In response, Chen Zhua didn't say much, just squeezed Jia Qi's hand, causing him to cry out in pain. Then, he walked directly in front of the foster mother, confidently declaring that if she had any complaints, she should direct them at him. But she didn't bother responding, instead sneering and saying he was no different than a toad trying to eat swan meat. Then she threw a stack of 30,000 yuan in front of him, as if wanting to subtly kick him out. Chen Zhua indifferently replied that the money meant nothing to him and he didn't need it, but he did express interest in the jade bracelet on her wrist. She immediately said that it was a gift that Jia Qi spent over 1 million yuan to buy. Chen Zhua calmly assessed that if the bracelet had never been broken, that price might be acceptable. But once it had been broken, no matter how skillfully it was repaired, it would no longer be worth the same. If she didn't believe him, she could try testing it herself. Unable to restrain herself, she forcefully snapped the bracelet, and just as he said, it broke in two. Jia Qi hurriedly blamed the seller, while the stepmother shifted the focus to how she had arranged a private meeting from Mei Ying that night with Boss Zhang, the head of the Jiangnan group, hoping to save the financial situation of the Wanlong Hotel. Despite not wanting to, under pressure from her father, Mei Ying had to agree. That night at the party, Mei Ying constantly raised her glass, showing sincerity to Boss Zhang in hopes of securing a cooperation agreement. But she had no idea that drugs had been slipped into her drink. A despicable plot devised by the stepmother with the aim of creating an opportunity for Jia Qi to act. When the drugs took effect, Jia Qi gleefully rushed over, planning to take advantage of her in her dazed state, determined to carry out his dirty scheme in the dark. That bastard Jia Qi hadn't even had a chance to do anything before Chen Zhua grabbed him by the collar and threw him hard to the ground. In a fit of anger, he punched and kicked him repeatedly, scaring him so much that he ran away in terror. However, the drug infused in the wine hadn't worn off, and now it was being fueled by lust, making Mei Ying's whole body burn like fire. In her dazed state, she turned to Chen Zhua, grabbing onto him and actively begging him to become her antidote. Both were swept away into a passionate night of love, neither able to resist or reason their way out. Jia Qi later found out about this and was extremely bitter, never expecting that he would become the catalyst for that unexpected intimacy. In a fit of rage, Jia Qi immediately ordered his men to prepare a scheme, planning for him to become the hero who saves the damsel in distress the next day. The next morning, Mei Ying woke up, feeling confused about her disheveled state and angrily thought that Chen Zhua had taken advantage of her. But then, when a server entered carrying new clothes and explained that she had dirtied her clothes last night, and Chen Zhua, worried about her catching a cold, had asked someone to help change her, she understood. It turned out that he hadn't done anything that crossed the line, having restrained himself amidst the passionate storm, protecting her to the end. Mei Ying felt embarrassed and apologetic and quickly apologized. She changed clothes, and as soon as she stepped outside, she encountered a restaurant employee frantically running to report that a customer had food poisoning. She immediately went to the scene and saw a man lying on the floor, causing chaos in the area. The people accompanying him demanded compensation of 300,000 yuan, saying that if they didn't comply, they would make a big deal out of it. However, Mei Ying wasn't easily willing to agree, because that would be no different than admitting that the hotel was at fault. As the back and forth became tense, a group of people began smashing things. Chen Zhua appeared, rushing in and beating the troublemakers severely, causing them to fall all over the place. One of them tried to attack him with a wine bottle, but when he clearly saw Chen Zhua's face, he immediately trembled and knelt down, stammering and calling him Big Brother, not expecting to meet him at this place. Sitting in the office, Mei Ying pondered the whole incident, a question rising in her heart. Who exactly is Chen Zhua? While she was thinking, an employee hurriedly ran in to report that Boss Zhang, the head of the Jiangnan group, was leading an assessment team to inspect the hotel. Mei Ying immediately left the room, while also ordering her subordinates to conduct a comprehensive investigation into Chen Zhuo's identity. Boss Zhang clearly expressed his dissatisfaction with the recent mess. He said that the restaurant department was an important part of the overall assessment of the hotel and sarcastically said that it seemed the whole company didn't understand the real reason why the hotel was losing money. Chen Zhuo calmly spoke up, clearly pointing out a series of reasons, from management methods and human resource services to weak marketing strategies. Boss Zhang was silent, acknowledging that it seemed the lower-level employees understood the hotel better than the executive board. When a subordinate returned the bracelet that he had dropped, Boss Zhang noticed it briefly and asked about the origin of the item. Chen Zhuo only said that it was a gift from a friend, but the way he reacted made him suspect Chen Zhuo's true identity. In the midst of the tension, a woman in the supervisory board showed contempt for Chen Zhuo, kicking him out with an insulting attitude. However, Boss Zhang spoke up, affirming that without Chen Zhuo's presence, this inspection would no longer be necessary. With that, he immediately left, leaving the others stunned in place. Mei Ying aimed to make her parents believe in the marriage between her and Chen Zhuo. She proposed that he share a room with her, with the clear condition that he would sleep on the floor while she slept on the bed. Chen Zhuo didn't object, agreeing and complying with her wishes. While she was in the bathroom, he took the opportunity to rummage through the room to find some clue. His eyes stopped at a photo, and memories of the past suddenly surged in his mind. 1 year ago, his mother fell into a deep ravine, but he had never believed it was an accident. Mei Ying was at the scene at the time. Perhaps she held some secret or evidence that he didn't know. The next morning, when the two stepped out of the room, Mei Ying's stepmother and Jia Qi were both extremely angry. Jia Qi bitterly felt that the hard work of getting 2 invitation tickets to the Jiangnan Group's charity gala had become meaningless. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, the stepmother stopped him, forcing Mei Ying to go with Jia Qi to the evening party. However, she bluntly refused, declaring that if she went, she would only go with Chen Zhuo. The other two laughed mockingly, seeing him as just a lowly security guard, not worthy of setting foot in such a luxurious place. But their smiles immediately froze when someone walked in. It was Chen Zhuo, personally handing him a VIP invitation to the event. That evening, Mei Ying and Chen Zhuo arrived at the gala. When he presented the invitation, the security guard said that it wasn't their type of invitation and refused to let them in. Chen Zhuo calmly requested that the leader be called to clarify. Just then, the guard received an urgent order from his superior and immediately changed his attitude, respectfully inviting both of them in with a formal reception reserved for VIP guests. Inside the gala, Jia Qi saw them and sarcastically raised his voice, saying that the quality of the gala was declining when an unknown security guard appeared there. At the same time, General Sun, another figure, also loudly said that his watch had just been lost, suspecting there was a thief in the room. Security approached and asked to check Chen Zhuo. Jia Qi smiled maliciously because he had secretly put the watch into Chen Zhuo's coat pocket before entering the hall. However, Chen Zhuo didn't show any panic. In front of all the guests, he personally took off his suit jacket, turning each layer of clothing inside out in front of everyone. It was completely empty. Not stopping there, he suggested expanding the scope of the investigation, starting with Jia Qi, who was always standing close to General Sunday. Jia Qi angrily argued, affirming that he didn't need to do such petty things. Just then, Yu Huan, the only granddaughter of the chairman of the Jiangnan Group, entered. She requested a fair check of all guests in the area. Finally, the missing watch was found in Jia Qi's coat pocket. It turned out that Chen Zhuo had quickly transferred the watch from his pocket to Jia Qi's pocket at some point without anyone noticing. Exposed, the two men had nothing to say, angrily leaving in silence. Afterward, Yu Huan quickly stepped forward, happily taking Chen Zhuo's arm, sweetly calling his name like a close relative who had been reunited after a long time. Chen Zhuo feigned unfamiliarity, not recognizing her, but Yu Huan calmly said that even if he forgot her, she always remembered him every day. At that time, Mei Ying's eyes gradually changed, and a feeling of jealousy quietly crept into her heart, making the atmosphere between the three suddenly become tense and confrontational. The cheerful conversation now turned into an open competition as the two women both wanted to assert their position beside the man named Chen Zhuo. The party began with the first item being put up for auction, a diamond necklace with a starting price of 800,000 yuan. Jia Qi, still wanting to impress Mei Ying, immediately bid 1 million yuan. Not letting him be, Chen Zhua bid 2 million, pushing the competition higher. In the end, he took the initiative to let Jia Qi own the jewelry for 2.5 million yuan, making the other party think he had won. However, the real event was just beginning. The final item was a rare diamond, exclusively for VIP guests participating in the auction, with a starting price of 40 million yuan. While everyone was gossiping, unclear on who qualified to participate, Chen Zhua calmly raised his SVP invitation card and directly bid 50 million yuan. Jia Qi's mocking laughter rang out, saying that Chen Zhua had no money to bid and was holding a handwritten invitation, a sign that it was fake. But in the midst of that, Chairman Huang personally appeared, making the atmosphere suddenly silent. He stepped onto the stage and announced that all successful auction items that evening would be paid for by the Jiangnan Group. And he personally praised Chen Zhua for dressing very formally, showing respect for the group. Chen Zhua didn't show any joy, only gently replied that even if he dressed well, he would still be looked down upon by others. Hearing this, Chairman Huang asked a meaningful question. Would anyone dare to look down on the future heir of the Jiangnan Group? The truth was revealed that Chairman Huang was once a colleague of Chen Zhua when they were both security guards at the Wanlong Hotel. He was the one who sent the SVIP invitation to Mei Ying's house, a deliberate action. Chen Zhua had suspected his identity from the moment boss Zhang paid special attention to the beads that the chairman had given him. And more importantly, the founder of the Jiangnan Group had the last name Huang. Chen Zhua wasn't surprised when he heard the confirmation from him that he was the chosen one to inherit the group. However, he maintained his position, saying that he was just an excuse for him to protect his granddaughter, Yu Huan. Chairman Huang only smiled, saying that it was interesting to talk to smart people, then mentioned the past, that Chen Zhua was the unacknowledged second son of the Chen family in Panlong City. His mother fell into a ravine in Jiangnan a year ago, and the death was concluded to be an accident. Although the Chen family had sent people to investigate, there were still no results. Chen Zhua didn't hide his suspicions about his mother's death, and Chairman Huang also revealed that many years ago, his mother had helped the Jiangnan Group overcome its biggest difficulties. That's why he had secretly investigated for the past year, and thought it was almost time for everything to become clear. He wanted to hand over the group to Chen Zhua to manage, but he refused outright. Yu Huan, hearing this, stepped in and asked for the reason, but only received an indifferent answer, making her even more curious and attracted to his mystery. Leaving the party in the car, Mei Ying couldn't hide her suspicion, asking, "Who are you really?" Chen Zhua stuck to his story, saying he was just a small-time security guard at the Wanlong Hotel, which she obviously didn't believe. That night, while she was showering, Chen Zhua took the opportunity to rummage through the room and unexpectedly found a medical report. It was a neurology test result, clearly stating short-term memory loss due to a sudden neurological reaction. He immediately understood that Mei Ying no longer remembered what happened at a crucial time in the past. Mei Ying came out and caught him sitting alone in the living room late at night, and she couldn't help but wonder about the real purpose behind him deliberately working as a security guard at the company. Just then, the lights flickered off and thunder rumbled outside. The darkness and chaotic sounds made her panic, and she couldn't help but throw herself into his arms. She asked him to go check the electricity while she stayed in the cold room. The darkness and the raging sounds of nature seemed to imprison her mind, making her only shrink into herself in the bathtub. After fixing the electrical system, he immediately ran in and saw her sitting shivering in the cold water. Realizing the weakness hidden behind her tough exterior, he gently comforted her, tenderly stroking her face. When he learned that her mother had died on a stormy night like this, he understood even more and carried her out of the bathroom. He told her to go rest first, while he needed to shower because he was soaking wet. But while he was showering, she unexpectedly walked in, shyly admitting that she was still afraid of thunder and wanted to be with him until the storm passed. Despite trying to remain calm, she couldn't hide the fear etched deep in her memory. Elsewhere, Jia Qi was ordering the capture of Chen Zhua's close subordinate, and Tao. He set a deadline of only 20 minutes for Chen Zhua to come to Jinglu Beach, where he would face the consequences. While he was beating in Tao, Chen Zhua appeared just in time, immediately rushing to rescue him. In the chaotic fight, he unleashed powerful punches that left Jia Qi's men unable to resist. Jia Qi tried to attack him sneakily, but Chen Zhua retaliated directly, kicking him to the ground. In a fit of anger, Jia Qi shouted that if it weren't for Chen Zhua, he and Mei Ying would have been married long ago. Not letting him dream any further, Mei Ying immediately slapped him, warning him not to touch her. Chen Zhuo also affirmed that in Jiangnan City, as long as he was there, Jia Qi would never have a foothold. That night, in the private room, Mei Ying gently bandaged his wounds. Soon after, he received a call from Chairman Huang, telling him to come immediately because there was a clue related to the investigation. But when he arrived, Chairman Huang was in critical condition. With a faint breath, he only had time to convey his last wish to take care of his granddaughter. Before taking his last breath, he pointed to a USB and left a handwritten letter. In the letter, he confessed that he knew he had a terminal illness and only had a few months to live. The only thing he was worried about was his beloved granddaughter. Over the past 3 months, he had secretly observed Chen Zhuo and believed that he was a man of loyalty and righteousness, worthy of entrusting with this responsibility. At the beach, Yu Huan cried herself out of energy, overwhelmed by the pain of losing the only relative she had left. Sitting in the car, Chen Zhuo for the first time clearly told Mei Ying the reason he came to work as a security guard at the Wan Long Hotel. 1 year ago, his mother died at the cliffs on Luhe Beach. He suspected it wasn't an accident, but a murder. Therefore, he needed Mei Ying to recount everything she remembered about her appearance at Luhe that year. However, Mei Ying admitted that she was too scared, so many memories had been forgotten. While the two were talking, the car suddenly lost control and crashed into a cliff. The strong impact triggered a series of forgotten memories in Mei Ying's head. In the chaotic jumble of memories, she saw the figure of a man, whose face was identical to Chen Zhuo. Waking up from her daze, she was shocked to realize that what made her most confused wasn't the lost memory, but why Chen Zhuo's face matched the person in her memory so perfectly. The confused memories from Luhe Beach made her start to be wary of him, because she didn't know that Chen Zhuo had a twin brother named Chen Yu. Meanwhile, Tao found him and reported that the camera data in the study had been edited. The video recording the moment before Chairman Huang died had also been deleted. Chen Zhuo immediately realized that his death wasn't simply due to illness, but was the result of a conspiracy. However, there wasn't a single USB left at the scene. In a state of confusion, Mei Ying decided that she wanted to end her relationship with Chen Zhuo. That made him angry, saying that in her eyes, he was no different than a tool to be discarded after being used. Mei Ying didn't deny it, calmly saying that she only cared about profit because she was a businesswoman. Her cold attitude made Chen Zhuo even more helpless, and he pressed her, asking what had happened. But when trust was gone, all explanations became meaningless. He could only ask her for one thing: to trust him, because no matter what happened later, he would absolutely not hurt her. In that moment, Mei Ying wondered if her memory was being obscured by something. That night, lying in bed, she tossed and turned, unable to sleep, struggling between keeping the secret or telling Chen Zhuo the whole truth. The next morning, when she arrived at the company, Mei Ying was surprised to see the employees gathering in a tense atmosphere. Rumors that the Wan Long Hotel was out of capital and unable to pay salaries had spread. She immediately reassured everyone that it was just a false rumor, committing to paying full salaries that month. However, the employees' worries weren't easily soothed. They demanded to be paid immediately. Just then, Chen Zhuo appeared, stepping forward to guarantee that salaries would be paid on time, affirming that the hotel wasn't bankrupt. If anyone caused trouble, they would be penalized for absenteeism. His firmness and decisiveness made everyone quickly disperse. Right then, Yu Huan unexpectedly appeared, offering to help the hotel escape the financial crisis. But the condition she set was that Mei Ying had to give Chen Zhuo up to her. Without hesitating, Mei Ying retorted coldly that Chen Zhuo wasn't private property to be bargained with, and if she wanted him, she could just take him. Then she left, leaving Yu Huan and Chen Zhuo to continue talking. Chen Zhuo frankly stated his position. He had no interest in inheriting the Jiangnan group, only wanting to live a simple life as a normal security guard. However, he had promised Chairman Huang that he would take care of Mei Ying, but only as a relative, nothing more. Mei Ying outwardly still acted proud and strong, but in her heart, she couldn't help but feel uneasy when she saw that Chen Zhuo hadn't returned for a long time. She worried that he would really be moved by Yu Huan. When he returned, she hastily hid her emotions, acting coldly and reminding him that he was still her fiancé in name. Chen Zhuo teased that she was jealous, but she immediately retorted, affirming that she had never been jealous because of a man. Chen Zhuo just smiled, emphasizing that he and Yu Huan had talked for a long time, thinking that she would care. Mei still kept her cold facade, telling him to quickly go shower to wash off the smell of a girl's perfume on him. Just when things seemed to have calmed down, Yu Huan unexpectedly brought a lot of luggage to Mei Ying's house. She met with Mei Ying's stepmother and declared that as long as she was made into Chen Zhuo's partner, she would be willing to invest in the Wanlong Hotel. Mei Ying resolutely objected, but her stepmother quickly agreed, unhesitatingly opening the door to welcome Yu Huan as a distinguished guest. Every time she saw Chen Zhuo, she would use her weakness as an excuse, acting fragile to get his attention. Although Chen Zhuo was clearly uncomfortable, there was nothing he could do since it was Mei Ying's stepmother who had agreed to let her stay. With her cleverness and tricks, Yu Huan constantly tried to approach Chen Zhuo. She used every method from being cuddly to pretending to be sick just to grab his attention. This made Mei Ying uneasy. She felt as if every inch of space in her house was being encroached upon by Yu Huan. When she learned that Chen Zhuo and Yu Huan would have to sleep in the same room, she immediately cut in, demanding that she sleep between the two of them. Though Chen Zhuo could only sigh, he finally had to give up his spot on the edge. Yu Huan was annoyed, but couldn't resist, only hugging her stomach and lying with her face to the wall. The next morning, the scene in the room made Mei Ying freeze. Yu Huan unexpectedly hugged her tightly, as if the two were close, while Chen Zhuo had fallen to the ground at some point and was still sleeping soundly. Although that awkward situation had passed, Yu Huan hadn't given up. She continued to devise new tricks, this time bringing a lot of gifts to Mei Ying's company. In front of all the employees, she calmly announced her desire to be Chen Zhuo's girlfriend. The whole company buzzed, while Chen Zhuo only coldly refused. He didn't waver in the face of that public proposal. When pulled aside, he just said directly that he always considered Yu Huan as a niece. Those words were like a heavy blow to Yu Huan's pride, making her turn red with anger. Upstairs, Mei Ying witnessed the whole scene. A sour smell of vinegar rose in her heart, and jealousy, like a simmering fire, burned, even though she still tried to act cold as if she didn't care. At the same time, the underworld forces began to move. Qinyu, Chen Zhuo's twin brother, had followed the tracks and found the place. In the darkness, he secretly planned to make Chen Zhuo's reputation be ruined and to forever take away his chance of returning to the Qin family. Not stopping there, an unexpected rumor exploded and spread like wildfire. Mei Ying was labeled as a mistress. When she stepped out of the car, a crowd surrounded her, spewing venom and scolding her as a cunning gold digger. In that moment, Chen Zhuo unexpectedly appeared, quickly squeezing into the crowd and dispersing the chaotic mob. But the root of everything lay in the person pulling the strings behind the scenes, Jia Qi. The one who had always longed to please Yu Huan was willing to smear another's reputation to achieve his goal. Soon after, Mei Ying's stepmother also arrived. Without bothering to find out the truth, she hastily criticized her fiercely. In her eyes, Mei Ying continuing to entangle herself with a man like Chen Zhuo only brought disaster. She even concluded that it was because of the competition with Yu Huan that the hotel was now severely affected and unable to continue doing business. Mei Ying spoke up to explain that she had never competed and that it was all orchestrated by someone behind the scenes, but her stepmother didn't believe it. She even forced her to break up with Chen Zhuo immediately. Meanwhile, Chen Zhuo wasn't sitting idly by either. He immediately called and ordered his men to handle all the unfavorable information about Mei Ying and the Wanlong Hotel within one day. Having experienced a series of shocks, Mei Ying began to waver, feeling tired of the cycle of scandals and pressure. Finally, she made the decision to stop. Chen Zhuo, seeing the firmness in her eyes, also nodded in agreement to end the contract between the two of them. Although neither said it, both understood in their hearts that it wasn't what they really wanted. But reality forced them to let go. After she left, he sat alone, drowning his sadness in alcohol. At that time, Yu Huan was waiting. Seeing him drunk, she approached, intending to help him up. But that action fell into the eyes of Mei Ying. She had barely left when she turned around because of an unexpected call from Tao, her trusted aide. Tao announced that Jia Qi had hired a group of reporters who were on their way to the Wanlong Hotel, and he was definitely planning to smear them. Without hesitation, Mei Ying immediately rushed to the hotel. Inside, Yu Huan had changed into a flimsy nightgown, secretly preparing to set a trap for Chen Zhuo. She pretended to be gentle and flirtatious with him while he was drunk. Just then, Mei Ying opened the door and walked in. Unfortunately, she slipped and fell due to her haste. Chen Zhuo, still conscious, quickly reached out and caught her. At that moment, the door behind them burst open, and a group of reporters rushed in, flashing their cameras continuously, the bright lights blinding the whole room. They bombarded them with questions about the rumors spreading online, wanting to confirm whether they were true. But Chinjua didn't answer. He just quietly looked at Mei Ying, the girl he had always protected, and then unexpectedly pulled her into his arms, giving her a kiss in front of astonished eyes to counter the smear campaign online. He publicly affirmed that Mei Ying was his true love, while Yu Huan was just the niece of an old acquaintance and had always been seen as a sister. Chinjua didn't hesitate to ask the public to stop the false associations. Mei Ying at that point understood that he had clearly known Jia Qi's scheme and decided to use his plan against him to turn the situation around. Chinjua continued to announce that between the two of them, it was no longer a contractual relationship, but true love. He also made it clear that he would always stand by her side, helping her overcome all the difficulties ahead. Looking into those resolute eyes, Mei Ying only smiled, a light but understanding and agreeing smile. At the same time, Yu Huan woke up in the bathtub, completely unaware of what had happened after she passed out. When she found out that the situation had been reversed, she was furious. On social media, public opinion shifted clearly. From criticism, now people praised Chinjua to the heavens. A man who dared to give up his status as son-in-law of the Jiang family, accepting to be a lowly security guard just for love. The image of the Wan Long Hotel also gradually improved, with positive comments increasing sharply. In response to the trust of her employees and Chinjua's efforts, Mei Ying took out a black card containing 5 million yuan, the money she had just gotten after selling the house her mother had left her. She gave the card to the accountant to pay the salaries of all employees, while also paying off all current debts. However, that action made her stepmother furious. She stormed into the company with a flushed face, slapping Mei Ying straight across the face. In front of everyone, she calmly declared that the house was the only asset her biological mother had left her. She had every right to deal with it, but the stepmother still wouldn't stop, standing in front of the company and shouting that the house couldn't just belong to her alone, unless she had the property deed to prove it. Just then, Chinjua appeared, gently saying that making such a fuss over a property deed wasn't necessary. In fact, Mei Ying only used the property deed as a temporary mortgage. Now, Chinjua had helped her redeem it. He hoped that from now on, she wouldn't cause any more trouble for Mei Ying. In another development, Yu began to pay attention to Chinjua's actions. He found it interesting that Chinjua dared to use the Chun family's personal account for a woman. Without hesitation, Yu ordered his men to target those around Chinjua, while also sending a message to Jia Qi. He would support Jia Qi in achieving what he wanted. On Mei Ying's side, after all the turmoil, she felt happy because for the first time in her life, she was truly protected by a man. The two lay next to each other, whispering, their eyes full of peace and trust. But in that moment, Chinjua's phone rang. The voice on the other end was Yu Huan's, full of panic, saying that she was being followed. Chinjua immediately ran out, unexpectedly being kidnapped by a stranger. When he woke up, he found himself tied up in a strange room. The person standing in front of him was none other than Jia Qi. In his hand, he held a golf club, coldly tightening it around Chinjua's neck. Yu Huan, standing to the side, was completely panicked, crying and begging him to spare Chinjua. She accepted any condition, as long as Chinjua was released. Jia Qi made a cruel demand. All of her shares in the Jiangnan group had to be transferred to him. Without hesitation, Yu Huan agreed. In her eyes at this moment, Chinjua was more important than anything else. She immediately went to sign the documents, despite Chinjua's vehement objections. After that, she moved forward to untie him. But contrary to expectations, Chinjua didn't thank her. He looked at her with cold eyes, saying something that left Yu Huan stunned. All her sacrifices, all her acting, had finally been seen through by him. He didn't hesitate to point out that those tricks couldn't fool him. Faced with his honesty, Yu Huan made excuses, saying that everything that happened today was real, that she was willing to give up everything for him without any hesitation. She even loudly questioned whether Mei Ying could do the same. Would she be willing to sacrifice the hotel she had painstakingly built up just for him? Chinjua didn't deny it. He frankly replied that Mei Ying didn't give up, not because she didn't love him, but because she had traded too much to get to where she was today. He also affirmed that even if she wanted to give up for him, he wouldn't allow it. Having said all that, he turned and left, leaving Yu Huan with her pain, filled with tears she couldn't hold back. But what Yu Huan didn't expect was that the place she thought she was in control of had been cleverly exploited by Jia. He used her plan against her, tricking her into signing legally binding documents, thereby seizing all management rights and kicking her out of the Jiangnan group. All because of a moment of recklessness, Yu Huan lost everything, and that bastard had fully achieved his goal. In despair, she turned to Chen Zhuo again, but just as she was about to hug him, Mei Ying stepped forward, resolutely pushing her away. Unexpectedly, Yu Huan wrapped her arms around Mei Ying herself in a dramatic way, making Chen Zhuo burst out laughing at the awkward scene. After that incident, Mei Ying still decided to help. She arranged for Yu Huan to have a new employee uniform, so that she could stay and work at the Wanlong Hotel. Faced with that kindness, Yu Huan said she would remember the favor forever. Meanwhile, at the Jiangnan Group's party, Jia was gloating as he announced that he had officially become chairman. Unexpectedly, just minutes later, he was doused with cold water before the dignified and arrogant appearance of Chen Zhuo. Without saying a word, he neatly punched 2 guards and strode into the middle of the hall, his eyes full of challenge. In his hand was the will left by the late Chairman Huang, a document giving him supreme veto power on the board of directors. On the spot, Chen Zhuo announced the decision not to approve Jiaqi's assumption of the position of chairman. Along with a recording of the conversation between Jiaqi and Yu Huan, clear evidence of his lies and conspiracy to seize power. Not stopping there, he also revealed Jiaqi's embezzlement of 100 million yuan during his time in power. He wasn't willing to give up, taking the life of a woman next to him as an excuse to escape, but he had underestimated Chen Zhuo. It was all within his calculations, and he had notified the police in advance. His final escape route was officially closed. Returning home, the atmosphere unexpectedly became peaceful again. Mei Ying's mother, who had always maintained a cold distance from Chen Zhuo, suddenly became gentle. She brought him a bowl of beauty-enhancing dessert, gently inviting him to eat it for nourishment. Not wanting to refuse, Chen Zhuo ate it all. Mei Ying's mother stood beside him, her eyes satisfied, thinking to herself, perhaps tonight, those two will finally become something. As the drug began to take effect, the fiery lust was intensely ignited, making Chen Zhuo quickly realize that he had fallen into a trap. But before completely losing control, he still tried to retain some reason, expressing his sincere words from the bottom of his heart. He spoke about the happy days with Mei Ying and affirmed his deep love for her. After that, all his emotions exploded like a fire being fueled with gasoline. A passionate night, hotter than 100 degrees, between 2 enamored people. They entwined in endless passion, then letting their reason be swept away by the flood of infatuation. Meanwhile, at the Wanlong Hotel, Chen Zhuo was sitting in the security room. The glass of water he had just finished drinking made his head spin, dizzy and disoriented. He collapsed on a desk, unconscious. Behind him, Jiaqi's triumphant expression was clearly visible in his eyes. Jiaqi then went to Chen Yu, reporting that he had completed the request. But not stopping there, he offered another bottle of medicine, forcing Chen Yu to make Mei Ying drink it within 2 days. If he could do it, he promised to help Chen Yu escape the law and get back what he had lost. At the moment Chen Yu raised his head, he paused. The face of the person in front of him was exactly like Chen Zhuo's, shocking him to the extreme. It turned out that Chen Zhuo and Chen Yu were 2 people who looked like 2 peas in a pod. Due to the effects of the drug, Chen Zhuo had temporarily lost his sight. While Mei Ying was helping him walk, she was unexpectedly ambushed, gagged, and kidnapped by Jiaqi. He took her to a secluded place, his eyes greedily looking at her unconscious body. But as he was about to force her to take the medicine, Mei Ying suddenly woke up. Just then, Chen Zhuo appeared, delivering a powerful punch that made Jiaqi collapse. He was stunned to realize that he had been tricked. Chen Zhuo had never lost his sight. It was all a performance. From the beginning, he had recognized that there was something wrong with the glass of water and only pretended to drink it to find out who was behind it. Chen Zhuo grabbed Jiaqi by the collar, demanding to know the real mastermind. But he stubbornly refused to reveal a word, then broke free and fled in the chaos. When things had calmed down for the moment, Chen Zhuo hugged Mei Ying tightly, vowing not to let her risk herself for him again. But Mei Ying appeared calm, saying that if they didn't take the opportunity to expose the culprit at this moment, they would forever live in fear. Chunju admitted that he still didn't know the specific effects of the drug, but he would definitely investigate to the end. And when he discovered that the drug had the ability to alter memories, he suddenly understood that Mei hadn't lost her memory due to psychological trauma, but because she had been affected from the outside. Immediately, he ran to tell her about the effects of the drug. After hearing it, Mei exclaimed in surprise that the vague memories had been caused by someone playing tricks. She recounted that she had seen a face very similar to his in the vague memory of the person who had killed his mother. Chunju was shocked. He knew that it couldn't be him, and he explained that the person she had seen was Chunyu, his twin brother. They had identical faces, differing only in one small detail. Chunju had a birthmark, while Chunyu did not. Hearing this, Mei asked, "Could it be that you are both in the Chun family in Panlong City?" Chunju didn't answer, only asserting that he must meet Chunyu to find out the truth about his mother's death. Immediately afterward, he went to find Chunyu, directly questioning him about the crime of the past. Chunyu didn't completely deny it, but excused himself, saying that he had only given her a gentle push. Their mother had fallen on her own. That indifferent speech made Chunju unable to restrain himself any longer. Fury erupted, and the first punch was thrown. Then the two lunged at each other in a fierce fight. During the struggle, they both fell together. Both Chunju and Mei were taken to the hospital. Mei immediately rushed over. Her heart was only truly relieved when she saw that Chunju was still alive. She hugged him tightly, breaking down after a moment of fear and shock. A question still lingered in her mind. Were the words he said on the phone, that his mother's death wasn't caused by his brother, actually true? Standing before her, Chunju nodded to confirm. He said that before the tragedy occurred, the two brothers had a heated argument. In a moment of anger, his brother accidentally pushed their mother off a cliff. Since childhood, his brother had always been competitive, always trying to sabotage everything he liked. But now, his brother had lost his memory, which was also fate's punishment. Even so, Mei couldn't easily accept it. She felt a desire to call the police, because a dangerous person like that couldn't roam free outside the law. However, Chunju stopped her. He knew that his brother was evil, but he was still family. He reassured her that if that person dared to harm her again, he definitely wouldn't spare him. Mei was touched and hugged him, wanting to share both trust and worry. But what she couldn't have imagined was that the person she was hugging wasn't the real Chunju. It was Chunyu, who had secretly impersonated him to deceive everyone, even Mei. In reality, Chunyu only had a minor head injury. When he saw Chunju lying unconscious on the hospital bed, he immediately had the idea to switch identities. With the help of his subordinates, Chunyu took his younger brother back to his private residence and lied that Chunju was the real owner. They gave Chunju a bottle of medicine, asking him to drink it regularly. When he woke up, with no memories in his head, Chunju asked the other person in confusion who he was. In response, he fabricated a story that he was the eldest son of the Chun family, who pushed his own mother off a cliff because of suspicion of his twin brother. In the face of those words, Chunju completely collapsed, not knowing what was real and what was fake. Meanwhile, Chunyu, who was impersonating his younger brother, leisurely sat eating dinner with Mei. But then she soon noticed something unusual. Since when did Chunju eat peanuts? When he used to be severely allergic. Chunyu awkwardly made an excuse to run into the bathroom, pretending to vomit to cover up his mistake. Inside, he quickly called his subordinate, ordering them to increase the dose of medicine for Chunju so that his younger brother would lose his memory completely, forever unable to recover. After that, he adjusted his expression, opened the door, and saw Mei standing right outside, her eyes filled with suspicion. His words and actions, although he tried to appear familiar, made her feel strange. He made the excuse that the shock just now had made him feel like he had a new life, and that from now on he would be a completely different Chunju, one who only belonged to her. He moved closer, wanting to find a way to be intimate with Mei, but an uneasy premonition made her quickly make an excuse to leave. When the sound of knocking on the door rang out, she quickly opened it, and then, the moment the door opened made her stunned to the extreme because the person in front of her was Chunyu. His eyes were lost, but as soon as he saw Mei, a series of memories suddenly flooded back, pushing his rationality beyond the blurred boundaries. As if an invisible thread was tightly pulling at his heartstrings, he rushed forward, squeezing her tightly in his trembling arms, his mouth constantly calling out her name. But Mei only felt confused. She continuously struggled in his arms, constantly wondering why every gesture, every word, was so similar to Chenjua. Her reason didn't allow her to believe it, because the person who had been standing next to her all this time had always been Chenjua. Chun Yu quickly appeared, his eyes flashing with alertness and threat. He walked out like a commander, brazenly pulling Mei Ying into the house and slamming the door shut. In the stifling space, he squeezed her arm tightly, his voice full of warning. He ordered her not to meet Chun Yu, whom he blamed for being dangerously unpredictable. As for Chenjua, now having lost his memory, he just stood silently in the rain, not understanding why he had come here. On Chun Yu's side, to continue maintaining the facade, he had impersonated his younger brother, even working as a security guard at the Wanlong Hotel. But in Mei Ying's eyes, the rude and crude behavior that he showed to customers had gradually revealed his true nature. She didn't say anything, just quietly observed, her suspicions smoldering in her heart. In the evening, when he wanted to stay in the same room, Mei Ying immediately found a way to avoid it. She made an excuse to split the room, while also testing him with a meaningful action. If he were truly Chenjua, he would be shy, but if he were Chun Yu, he wouldn't be able to keep up the act. She remembered very clearly that Chenjua had once said that although they were identical twin brothers, their personalities were completely different. In particular, Chenjua had a birthmark in a private place, while Chun Yu did not. Based on that, she had cleverly observed, and, indeed, the birthmark was there. But that very moment made her heart confused. She blamed herself for being suspicious, then hurriedly made an excuse to leave the room. Unexpectedly, all of this was part of Chun Yu's sophisticated plan, who had used every means, even creating a fake birthmark just like his younger brothers. In another space, Chenjua was struggling with severe headaches in his sleep. Images of his mother kept appearing, invading his mind. Chun Yu's subordinate walked in, saw the pain, and thought that this was a good opportunity to eliminate the final threat for his boss. He kept planting harmful thoughts in Chenjua's head, that he was an unscrupulous person who had even killed his own mother. He wanted Chenjua to collapse, despair, and then take his own life. But what he didn't expect was that the delirium awakened something else inside Chenjua. His eyes, initially confused and shrinking, suddenly turned cold. Springing up, he stomped hard on the hand of the person trying to deceive him, as if wanting to crush the rotten plot under his heel. And then, without any hesitation, he uttered a curse-like sentence, "If I'm really a bad person, then from now on I'll be bad to the end." The other person, a loyal henchman of Chun Yu, appeared, giving Chenjua a box of medicine with the false claim that it was a sedative. Only when he saw him drink, was he relieved to leave the room. But what both Chun Yu and his subordinate didn't know was that Chenjua had never drunk any of the medicine he gave him. And more importantly, he had never lost his memory. It was all a plan he had secretly arranged. In his heart, he thought, "Chun Yu, if you want me to become you, then I'll borrow your identity to overthrow you." The next morning, Chenjua wore a hat to cover his face, quietly bringing food to Entao. The longtime brother, seeing the sullen appearance, thought it was some crazy stranger throwing a lunchbox at him. But when he opened the box, a small line of text appeared. "Entao, remember to look after our sister-in-law 24/7. In an instant, Entao's heart was shaken. "Only Big Brother Chenjua remembers my preference for beef rice." On the other side, Mei Ying opened the door and found a package placed on her doorstep. As soon as she opened it, a voodoo doll appeared, causing her to be speechless with fright. Seeing that bewildered expression, Entao immediately appeared, his face serious. He determined that her current residence was no longer safe and suggested taking her back to the hotel, where he could protect her day and night. Without hesitation, Mei Ying nodded in agreement. Chun Yu still didn't give up, hiding behind a wall, monitoring, thinking that he had control of everything, but he didn't know that the one really watching everything was Chenjua from afar. When Mei Ying returned to her room, her intuition surged, and Tao's unusual behavior made her begin to suspect that he had also realized that the person next to her wasn't really Chenjua. Before long, Chun Yu continued his charade, this time an elaborately planned proposal. Immediately afterwards, a man in a suit suddenly walked in. It was Chenjua, dressed and with a demeanor no different from Chun Yu. He calmly asked, as if playing the lead role in comedy, "Is today the day I'm invited to witness my brother's proposal?" Mei Ying shuddered slightly. If the man who had just appeared was really Chenjua, then he definitely wouldn't let her be bound by an impostor. So, in a challenging moment, she deliberately nodded in agreement to Chun Yu's proposal as a final test. But before the ring could touch her hand, a resounding slap from a woman who had just walked and shattered the fake atmosphere. She questioned Chunyu, asking why, while already engaged to her, he dared to propose to another girl. It turned out that it was all part of Chunju's plan. He had secretly contacted Mu Zi, Chunyu's real fiancée, and brought her back from abroad. Everything was arranged to expose the true face of the impostor. Even so, Chunyu still didn't give up. He coldly declared that he only wanted to marry Mei Ying in this lifetime. But Chunju just smiled calmly in response. If the feelings are that deep, then it means you have to give up the position of leader. Chunyu then pulled Mu Zi outside, asking to talk privately. But before leaving, she turned to Mei Ying, leaving behind a meaningful sentence. Open your eyes and see clearly whether the person in front of you is really the one you want. Those words pierced Mei Ying's heart. Her mind was in turmoil. She looked at the man who had just helped her retie her hair ribbon. His gestures were so gentle and familiar, her heart couldn't lie anymore. She hesitantly asked him if he was Chunjua, and with all his steadiness, he affirmed that he was Chunjua. Mei Ying happily hugged him, as he softly affirmed his identity. But unexpectedly, he pushed her away, his face cold as he rejected her. He pretended that it was all just a play, that the name is just a symbol, it doesn't mean anything, call me whatever you want. Faced with that attitude, Mei Ying furiously slapped him hard, then turned and ran away. Watching her fading figure, Chunjua silently thought that for her safety, he was forced to not take her back at this time. Afterwards, he took Mu Zi back to the house that originally belonged to Chunyu, deliberately acting intimately to deceive those following them. When Chunyu's henchman appeared, he announced that Mu Zi would be staying here from now on. The guy immediately believed it and withdrew, allowing him to replace his position. Chunjua didn't forget to thank Mu Zi for cooperating. Mu Zi took the opportunity to start showing signs of intimacy. However, when she made a seductive overture, Chunjua sternly refused. He emphasized that he was Chunjua, not Chunyu, and had no interest in a woman who had once belonged to the one who had stolen everything from him. But Mu Zi wouldn't give up, reminding him that Chunyu had once snatched Mei Ying from his hands, so didn't he want to return that pain in a similar way? Even so, Chunjua coldly refused, affirming that his current concern wasn't revenge through romance, but regaining his position as the head of the Chen family. Mu Zi suddenly hugged him tightly, confessing that she had loved him since she was little, had always been pushed away by him, but Chunjua only calmly replied that he had never considered her a lover, but only a family member, a friend, and that the only person he truly loved was Mei Ying. She immediately threatened to reveal the fact that he had never lost his memory to Chunyu. Chunjua didn't flinch, reminding her that being clever in the wrong place would become a disaster, then turned and left. On the other side, Chunyu tried to appease Mei Ying after the failed proposal. He expressed his regret and affirmed his sincere feelings, even being willing to give up power to keep her. When Mu Zi approached and leaned into his arms, Mei Ying quickly noticed a strange lipstick mark on his shirt, the same kind of lipstick that Mu Zi used. She quickly went to the bathroom and began a plan. She secretly put sleeping pills into a glass of wine, then pretended to take a sip, waiting for the right moment to entice him to drink. At the same time, Chunjua quietly searched Chunyu's room. Mu Zi unexpectedly appeared, asking him what he was looking for. She revealed that Chunyu had a strange habit. He liked to collect evidence in his own works, like an artist obsessed with the past. She had once seen him admiring those mementos alone in a creepy fascination. It was this that made her believe that Chunjua impersonating him was inevitable in order to find out the truth. Chunjua didn't deny it, and also affirmed that his mother's death was definitely related to Chunyu. Otherwise, he wouldn't have plotted to attack Uncle Huang and Mei Ying. He admitted that he originally didn't want to compete, but his principle was that no one could touch his boundaries. Mu Zi advised him that he was looking in the wrong place, because the things that were most important to Chunyu were always carried with him. In the meantime, Mei Ying's plan began to take effect. She quickly took Chunjua's old tablet, secretly testing the fingerprint of the man next to her. The result didn't match, confirming what she had always suspected. This person wasn't the real Chunjua. In a daze from the sleeping pills, Chunyu suddenly woke up, saw Mei Ying trying to unlock the iPad, and hurriedly made the excuse that she wanted to use the device, but had forgotten the password. He didn't suspect anything, and used his right hand to unlock it with his fingerprint. Mei Ying immediately left, leaving behind her with a cold glare. The next morning, Chunjua went to the Wan Long Hotel, got the room number, and went straight up. Mei Ying secretly followed, and he pulled her into the room. She deliberately showed intimacy, aiming to check whether he had a birthmark on his hip, but Chenjue kept avoiding it. Unable to bear it any longer, Mei Ying had to admit that she knew clearly that he was Chenjue, not Chenyu. Returning home, while taking clothes to wash, Mei Ying was suddenly grabbed by Chenyu. While struggling, she accidentally picked up a memory card. When she asked about it, he only lied that it was just a game card. She refused to hand it over, which made him angry, threatening loudly. He sneered, asking, "Do you really think I'm like Chenjue?" That's when he completely revealed his true face. Mei Ying was horrified and immediately ran away. But unexpectedly, Chenjue was waiting, delivering a blow that knocked him to the ground. Mei Ying immediately rushed over to hug Chenjue, and the two left together to talk. Chenjue believed that the memory card might contain all of Chunyu's criminal evidence. Indeed, when they opened it, inside was a video extracted from the surveillance camera recording the entire event on the day of the murder. However, the images in the video were not entirely as he had initially guessed. A pool of blood appeared in the shot, which reminded Mei Ying that before being ambushed by Chenyu, the spot where he was standing had caught the blood. Chenjue then inferred that this could be the part of the truth that Chenyu had been trying to hide all along. On the other side, Chenyu was raging mad. He ordered his subordinates to capture Chenjue and Mei Ying and bring them back to him. As for Chenjue, after getting Mei Ying back, he took her to the place where he used to live. In the room covered with photos of her, Mei Ying realized that he had been secretly in love with her for a long time. The two shared a sweet kiss, filled with all the longing and pin-up hurt from the long period of time. Lying next to him, Mei Ying still couldn't be at peace. She was worried about Chunyu's cruelty. That video was only a small part. Only by finding the full recording could they expose and convict him. Chenjue reassured her, saying that he would take advantage of this identity swap plot to retaliate, making Chunyu taste bitterness for tying the noose around his own neck. He advised her to rest easy, and then, when she fell asleep, he quietly left. At the same time, Chenyu continued his brutal tricks. He had Tao captured and brutally tortured to force him to reveal information related to Chenjue. But Tao, despite his body being full of injuries, didn't give in. He would rather die than say a word. Chenjue finally found the place, his eyes full of anger. He confronted Chenyu, declaring that if there was anything, he should aim it at him. All this time, he had never competed, but that didn't mean he was weak. Chenjue clearly warned Chenyu that he had never been a worthy opponent. Chenjue thought he could finally kill Chenyu, but was unexpectedly stopped by Mei Ying. He didn't understand the reason, until he discovered a bitter truth. Chenyu's people had forced her to drink a special drug. That drug caused her thoughts to be controlled, making her mistake Chenyu for Chenjue, while Chenjue was the devil in her mind. They even forced him to admit that he was Chenyu and reported him to the police to convict him of impersonation. Faced with that situation, Chenjue had to flee in Yu Huan's car. Sitting in the car, realizing that everything was a tangled mess, he decided to tell Yu Huan the whole truth. Every word she heard shocked her to a standstill. After calming down, Yu Huan agreed to cooperate with him to save Mei Ying. The plan began with Yu Huan going to Mei Ying's house, pretending to be heartbroken and asking to stay overnight for comfort. Chenyu was suspicious, but couldn't do anything. He could only swallow his anger. The next morning, during the meal, Yu Huan observed Chenyu's phone. She remembered Chenjue's instructions to destroy his phone at all costs to cut off his contact with the outside world. Taking advantage of an opportunity, she deliberately spilled water on the phone, causing the screen to become paralyzed. To avoid suspicion, she also pretended to be affectionate, giving Mei Ying an alarm bracelet, telling her that if anything happened, just press the button and someone would come immediately. When night fell, Chenjue broke into Chenyu's room. He knew very well that Chenyu was trying to push him to the brink, not knowing that the one he was facing was the person he wanted to eliminate. The next morning, Chenjue continued the plan to disguise himself as Chenyu, pretending to fly into a rage and punching and kicking his subordinates to convince them that he was the real evil person. The brutally beaten Chun Zi cowered in a corner, trying to call Chenyu, but there was no response. Seeing this, Chenjue approached, coldly announcing that the phone was broken. There was no need to call anymore. He pretended to probe, asking if he was hiding anything. Chunzi fearfully knelt at his feet, confessing that during the process of handling the video, he had made a copy, but insisted that he hadn't betrayed him. Chenjue then ordered him to hand over the copy. When the video was opened, the whole truth gradually became clear. Chen Yu had deliberately murdered their mother and orchestrated a drama to blame Chenjue, including the plots to control Mei Ying's mind. Without hesitation, he immediately called the police. On the other side, Chen Yu, after discovering that his phone was broken, dragged Mei Ying outside under the pretext of buying a new one. But as soon as they left the house, Mei Ying pressed the alarm button on the bracelet. Immediately afterwards, she sprayed pepper spray in his face, then ran quickly and hugged Chenjue, who was waiting nearby. At this time, Chen Yu realized in shock that Mei Ying had never lost her memory. It was all an act she had coordinated with Chenjue to lure him into a trap. The rage made him lose control, unable to accept the truth, but before he could do anything, he was ambushed with a golf club by Jia Qi, who also held a grudge against Chen Yu. The fatal blow made Chen Yu collapse, falling into a vegetative state, with no one knowing when he would wake up. After Chen Yu fell into a vegetative state, his grandmother immediately ordered Chenjue to return to take over the Chen family and marry Muzi. But he resolutely refused, declaring that he would only marry Mei Ying. Faced with his tough attitude, Mei Ying took his hand, affirmed that she was his future wife, and made it clear that Chenjue would rather be a security guard at the Wan Long Hotel than inherit the family fortune, causing the grandmother to angrily leave. The next morning, the grandmother brought her anger to the Wan Long Hotel to meet Mei Ying. She frankly opposed the relationship, but Mei Ying firmly maintained her position, affirming that Chenjue was a priceless gift and she wouldn't leave him. At that moment, Chenjue appeared, took her hand, and affirmed that he would only love Mei Ying in his lifetime. He declared that if he couldn't marry her, then he would give up the position of head of the family, then directly pulled her away, causing the grandmother to get so angry that she had a heart attack. He took her to a place he had prepared in advance, witnessed by Yu Huan and Tao. He knelt down to propose. Mei Ying happily agreed. The ring was exchanged as an affirmation of the intense love between them. They shared a sweet kiss. Afterwards, when Mei Ying received a call from her mother, telling her to come home immediately, the two immediately returned. However, the Chen family unexpectedly came to pick up Chenjue with the reason that his grandmother wanted to see him. When he returned, he didn't see her anywhere, but only Muzi was waiting. She deliberately tricked him into coming back to persuade him to take over the family business. He refused outright, but unexpectedly inhaled sleeping gas and collapsed. At the same time, Mei Ying was also tricked into getting on a car with her parents to leave the country, because the Chun family had acquired the Wan Long Hotel. On the way, she resolutely demanded to get out of the car, otherwise she would commit suicide. Faced with her resolute attitude, her father was forced to stop the car. Before leaving, Mei Ying looked back at her father one last time, then ran off to find Chenjue. Chenjue, after waking up, smashed a wine bottle, used a shard to stab his hand, forcing Muzi to release him. When he heard that Mei Ying had boarded the plane, he immediately ran to find her. He finally found her. The two hugged each other tightly in tears. Mei Ying hurriedly bandaged his wound, and they shared a sweet kiss as a promise to overcome all the storms. The next morning, Muzi brazenly came to the company, declaring herself the new chairman of the Wan Long Hotel. But Chenjue unexpectedly appeared, affirming that the Wan Long Hotel could only bear the name of Su. Mei Ying walked in, officially announcing that she was taking back control of the hotel. Yu Huan also appeared, declaring that the Jiangnan Group was the second largest shareholder, and together with Mei Ying's shares, they completely controlled the operations. Muzi angrily left after warning Chenjue that he would regret it. Mei Ying nominated Chenjue to become the new chairman of the hotel. Everyone agreed, but he refused, saying that the Wan Long Hotel should only bear the name of Su, and that he only wanted to be a small bodyguard next to Boss Su. While having lunch with Mei Ying, Chenjue received bad news. His grandmother had passed away. Without waiting for her to return from the restroom, he immediately went home, kneeling before her coffin in utmost grief. At the funeral, the will was announced. Chenjue would inherit the position of head of the Qin family. However, Chen Yu's faction vehemently opposed it, saying that he was just a thug, not worthy. In front of everyone, he threw a punch at the provocateur, then growled that from now on he was the head of the Chun family, and anyone who had an opinion could get lost. At the same time, Tao came to report the news to Mei Ying. She immediately went to the morning hall, quietly bowing to bid farewell to his grandmother. Chenjue stepped forward to say goodbye to her, revealing that he had promised his grandmother that he would inherit the position of head of the family, and after the mourning period, he would marry Muzi. That statement made Mei Ying collapse, tears constantly falling. She left the mourning hall in despair, but in her heart she still believed that Chen Zhua had his own hardships. However, when she accidentally caught him being intimate with Mu Zi, her heart felt torn apart. Mu Zi then spoke up, warning, "The mourning period for your grandmother isn't over yet. Being so intimate is not appropriate." Chen Zhua indifferently asked in return, "Didn't you want me to be Chen Yu so I could date you?" That statement shocked Mu Zi. She looked directly at Chen Yu, who had been pretending to be a vegetable all this time, and bitterly recalled being raped by him since she was 18 years old. From then on, her heart was filled with only hatred. Chen Yu angrily admitted that it was time to finish off Chen Zhua. He forced him to give up the position of family head, threatening the lives of Mei Ying and Yu Huan. Chen Zhua agreed to trade his status to save the two women, even preparing to stab his own eyes blind as he demanded. But right then, Mu Zi suddenly turned on him, stabbing Chen Yu multiple times with a knife, causing him to tumble down the stairs, unconscious. She bitterly confessed that throughout the years, every time she was forced to be intimate with Chen Yu, it made her disgusted. As it turned out, it was all part of Chen Zhua's plan. He knew that Mu Zi had been harmed, knew that Chen Yu was treacherous, so he deliberately pretended to break up with Mei Ying to protect her. He suggested cooperating with Mu Zi, using her to lure Chen Yu out and trap him. The plan succeeded. After Chen Yu woke up, he was punished by the law with charges of kidnapping, attempted murder, and was imprisoned. Chen Zhua devoted all his efforts to rebuilding the Chen family, and in just 3 months, he helped the enterprise flourish. On one occasion, returning to the Wanlong Hotel, he appeared in his security guard uniform, as if to say that for the rest of his life, he only wanted to protect Mei Ying. Under the bright lights, he walked to her side, and they exchanged a sweet kiss amidst the applauding and cheering of everyone. The drama The Best Man ends with a satisfactory, complete, and emotional ending. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, so the channel has motivation to release more great videos faster. Thank you all.